antisocial behaviour from quite a number of people. It's not just one person. In that effect, we've been going down an approach where we've been trying to identify these people. We've been issuing civil paperwork, something called a CPW, which is Community Protection Warning. In essence, it's like a civil planning notice to the location, is how we're kind of taking the enforcement to begin with. If people start breaching that, we have then an escalation policy, which ultimately does lead to an arrest and applications to magistrate courts for criminal behaviour orders, which previously were known as ASTOs, for those of you in the audience that would have been aware of those. That's one of the priorities in Aston. Aston itself is a very busy area for West Midlands Police. It attracts a lot of demand. We've got a lot of people living here ultimately, and as a consequence of that, there's a lot of calls for service. I recognise it, what may matter to one part of the community might not matter in the same respect to other parts of the community. Things like parking, I'm regularly told about in small heath meetings, and having worked in Aston for a couple of weeks, I can see there's a lot of vehicles on the road. Parking is an issue. We do work with City Council, etc., highways agencies, all of those around those issues. I know that Cairo and PCSO has got a few operations in line coming up in the next few weeks, so hopefully that will have some sort of impact around those issues. But it is a case of competing demands for neighbourhood policing, and it is really a case of what do you guys want to see from your neighbourhood team, and we can reflect our priorities to those. A good neighbourhood policing team ultimately works on community intelligence. If we're hearing from residents like yourself what your issues are, what you want to see from the neighbourhood policing team, we can then reflect those in what our performance stats look like. If we're not receiving from the community the direction that they want to see us go in, we then set our priorities based on what the force priorities are, and at times they can be different to the community priorities. So I know that Aaron's new in post. It's come from Samwell. He has got a background in neighbourhood policing. He was in neighbourhood policing for about 10 years in Samwell, so he's not new to neighbourhood policing as a whole. He's new to Birmingham, he's new to the area, and I know he's making efforts to get out in the community and understand Aston a little bit more and Newtown at the same time. I think, speaking for Aaron now and Lady Release as a whole, I'll provide these contact details. The best way. Get in touch with the Aston team, and if you've got a recurring issue that maybe doesn't warrant a 999 call, 101 call, but you know that it matters a lot to residents, please email it through, because that's what neighbourhood policing is there for. That's what we want to do. We want to be dealing with your concerns the best way we can. Sometimes it might not be a police issue, but as neighbourhood officers, we're looking at partnership working all the time. We can connect you with the best people that we want. I'm conscious that I'm talking a lot, so I don't know if you guys are happy. If anyone's got any burning questions for me, I can try and answer them.
If I ask
Yeah.
police response, do you have any how long it takes the average police response to 999?
Yeah, so the way police calls for service operate is we have essentially anyone calls in 999, the first person to talk to is a call handler. They complete something called the drive assessment, and in essence what they're doing is they're assessing the threat risk harm at any given time to that person who's made that call. That then goes into a priority grading matrix. So you'll hear police officers talk about P1, P2, P3, P6, etc. Those essentially are how fast we want to respond to that incident given threat risk harm that presents to those individuals. So if you're calling 999 and you're being told you're going to get a P2 response, that means that you'll get an hour response. Desirable outcome for West Midlands. Genuine emergencies will always be P1s, and that is our aspiration as a service is to respond to that call within 10 minutes. Much like the ambulance service, if you're having a heart attack, etc., their aspiration is to be there on scene within 10 minutes. Aston geographically is well placed. Park Lane is the main response base for this side of Birmingham, which is obviously geographically right in the middle of Aston and Newtown. That doesn't always mean that the car's coming from there, but we do aspire to be at all those calls for service within 10 minutes. I know that in the last 6 months, our calls for service response time have greatly increased. I can't tell you we're getting to them. But I can tell you that I know that we are now hitting our target, which means we are getting to calls within 10 minutes if they are emergencies. As I say, people will call the police for a variety of reasons. It might be a situation where you need to do something there and then, you might be calling. Sometimes it's something that we can deal with over the phone. Obviously, as a police officer personally, I'd love to go out to every call and be a visible presence for that person. If you're calling the police, you want to see a police officer. That's probably a fair assessment. Sometimes that's not the case because of the number of calls, and we do recognise that as a police service. But we are trying our best to make sure that everyone that really needs us to be there as a police officer there.
What we as local residents, then properly. Does that also include working with multi-agencies? Yeah. So Birmingham City Council got a team. Suppose their area of expertise is looking at ability of a property, but they can present to you. There were very little complaints. We said, well, actually, that's not right. I suppose people don't report matters. They don't. But from your experience and working at, knowing what you do know, does the West Midlands Police with other multi-agencies and where you get consistent reoffending people should be resident of in that city. Unless we get that sort of system, we don't see any real resolution because you can't get rid of exempt property. All other constitutions, legislation doesn't allow that. But what we can do is improve the quality of people.
I think that from a neighbourhood police perspective, our interest in those types of situations being caused by the person at those properties. If the solution to that is for us to engage with partner agencies, being one of them, multiple housing providers, for example, we'll take those steps. We're not going to be the lead agency in that. We're there for the criminal With policing is difficult because quite often you find that someone will call the police because they're the service that are the most ground fit for that problem. Not necessarily at all the times is the police the best service for that. We are getting better and aspiring to be better at making sure we can direct people to the right people that they should be speaking to at source. Traditionally, call handlers weren't there for that purpose. They were there to answer the phone, but a lot of time it goes to the neighbourhood team and they're the ones that know where to go with that. It's a difficult question because I can't answer it hypothetically in a situation. I can't give you an overall option. Yes, we're always going to do that. No, we're not. In terms of aspirationally from the neighbourhood point of view, that sounds like a very sensible thing. Probably halving our calls for service. We have repeat offender service. Can't suit people. There is a
good old days. We used to be regular meetings. That's something not happening anymore.
It does happen. It happens in different forms. So Birmingham, as a policing unit, has been dedicated their sole purpose in policing is to deal with multiple occupants or however you want to phrase it. demand there is probably greater than those two officers. People like Tyrone, Louise, PCSOs regularly engage with housing providers and outside agencies, which policing two-sided. We've got the offenders that are potentially causing issues, but there's also the side of it where sometimes those people need a bit of extra support, and therefore they're not necessarily against that support. And we are looking at how, as a service, we can say to recognise that that person is an offender, but equally, if we can put some work in place to prevent them from repeating that, we have a whole division of offender managers now in policing. It's not new, but it is something that we've invested in, and they are very much invested in preventing repeat offending, and that's something that will come into that. I can't say definitively that we are 100% everything, all about that at the moment. Very sensible thing, I'll raise with Aaron, direction in police, and probably.
Open the question.
I just want to know a few things very quick. Generally, when are we going to get traffic warrants in the area? Because basically, now that everything is so claustrophobic in Witten Road, people just jump out their car and go to the chip shop or go to wherever they want to go in the middle of the road. Number two, what's going to happen to the future of the police system? Because if the government's written you off as not fit for purpose, what is the future for us? And how long are you going to stay at this job? Because basically it's generally like a conga game with sergeants in the area. So are you permanent? Are you going to stay? Or are you going to go like the rest of them?
So as for the first question, traffic enforcement officers, they're not part of the police. They come from Birmingham City Council.
But you can employ traffic wardens though, couldn't you?
The police service is nothing to do with traffic enforcement.
So
Birmingham City Council provide a service in regards to that. So I'd have to direct your questions towards them. I can't answer that one.
Okay.
The second question, I'm not going to be able to answer that in a couple of lines, but in terms of the third question, let me do that first. So Aaron, newly promoted, obviously I'm not Aaron. He would have liked to be here, unfortunately, shift patterns don't align, etc. In terms of Aaron, he's landed here as of a week ago. I can't answer how long he's going to be here. Policing.
No, how long are you going to be here? I know how long he's going to stay.
I'm not here in that sense. I'm in Small Heath. I can't tell you how long I'm going to be in post for. People do get moved within police.
The main problem in the West Midlands Police, how long people are going to stay here and know the area.
No, I understand it's frustrating. As I say, the people who I know that are on the Aston neighbourhood team, so you've got Tyrone, Louise, PCSOs, they've been in post for a while.
Well, I know them.
Yeah, so they've been here a while. The officers that are there, obviously West Midlands Police is a massive organisation. People do move around within organisations like any other business. Neighbourhood policing is unique in the sense that you do want continuity, and we recognise that. However, like any other business, workforce, HR, there are reasons people move. People aren't being dropped in and out as a conscious choice by the police. And it's not ideal, and I appreciate that, and I can reflect that back to management, etc. And it is something that.
But it's been going on. It's been going on since 2010. All of this moving around, and it's probably even before that.
Yeah.
To help you with that second question, is just generally, when I pick up my phone, I don't get to Aston Police Station. I get some other force like Acox Green or something like that. So how is it visible and call it a community policing when I don't get a Aston Aston police officer?
So in terms of when you call for the police,
yes,
you're never going to get a neighbourhood officer as the first point of contact. That's not how the current force structure works.
Then why bother calling it a community policing when you know full well I'm not going to get an Aston?
There are ways and means of getting in contact with community policing. As I said, at the end of this, I'm going to try and pass on details for that. There is a direct email inbox to the Aston team, which you can email in. Obviously, policing is that service where you call because you need something, you potentially danger, harm, etc. And therefore, you're likely to need a faster response. You can't guarantee that a neighbourhood officer is going to be on duty at any one time.
Or any officer, yeah, sorry.
There is always an officer on duty. I can see that you obviously do have issues with the police service, and I'm happy to talk to you about them. I don't want to take up everyone's time with that, but we'll talk.
I'm sure they feel the same way as well, but well.
Yeah, so question one, Aston currently parade with one sergeant, Darren. They have 4 police officers, 8 PCs, 2 PCSOs. There will be an additional PCSO 5 weeks that will be there on training. Their training period. There'll be 3 PCSOs for the next 5 weeks. There is due to be 2 more officers. That doesn't account for whether or not officers then move in the organisation. I don't know. That's Aston and New County, and I appreciate that that's small. Neighbourhood policing at the moment is small. We actually the 22 probably a little while ago. Largely most of those student officers they rotate through our mental process. I know that the force is investing in Birmingham at the moment, so different areas of force officers there are own staff proportionally to the demand. Therefore, there will be officers being around Birmingham. That's the way that neighbourhood police is illegal. We do accept that. We're aware of that. I'm a neighbourhood police and I always have been able to do the job. I've done 4 years in policing and I want to be a neighbourhood police officer. Rewarding, you get to talk to people in the community and help with your long-term problem solving. There's lots of my colleagues that would like to be doing that as well, but they're in different roles. How we as an organisation sort out ultimately the primary purpose. But properly well resourced everything to respond to concern, probably reduce policy. That's very much my opinion, but I'd like to think that that's in terms of statistically crime, before I came over, in the last 6 months, there's been a overall reduction in crime in Aston. I can't attest that every single subsection of crime. However, I know that the main priorities currently within West Midlands Police are violence among young people. That in Aston probably reflects sort of younger males running around with weapons, knives, etc. That's very much a priority. Serious youth violence in people under the age of 25 is a massive priority for police, along with firearms and how they're used. All both of those key providers have seen reductions in accidents. Violence against women is very much a consistent priority for West Midlands Police and policing nationally. Again, that is something that we're constantly working towards. I don't know what the our policing and our approach to policing will reflect priorities like those. You find to get dedicated patrols that are officers to sit through that process, so that does exist. Obviously, Aston is a very large area in terms of policing jobs. You get crimes that aren't necessarily affiliated with Aston.
One question. In Aston, police sets where we have young people in the car, inhaling the helium.
Outside, yeah.
So if you do come across that, I know you've gone with your working from what is it that you do?
So, as of about 3 months ago, I can't give you Westminster police deal with it very similarly. We have an interaction with them. First port of call for us will be, it is a crime. That will be recorded, they're an offender for that crime. How can we look to deal with it by a means of actual disposal at first? So we work with a partner agency called Aston. Essentially, they provide a diversionary activity for that person. Statistically, that makes a massive impact on reoffending. Those stats are from cannabis. However, it's effective. Alcohol disposals in general are really effective, and things like restorative justice, various parties and low-level offences does make a big difference. That's the approach we take to that person will be a named offender, however they'll be diverted to outside partnering. Why using that? If they fail to comply, they do then get prosecuted. They go to court. Obviously, the police are an investigating body. We're not the prosecuting agency. So ultimately, the decision sits with the criminal prosecution. Outside of the police, we gather evidence, and then they prosecute. Sometimes the no-level offences they don't get carried through because we make sure and go to court and fine, etc. Personally, I don't agree with it, but that's very much not a police service issue. That's a CPS one. Most of the time, though, in my experience, I can talk cannabis, but it's a very similar process. The last 2 weeks, I've got two jobs very similar. The person's not suitable to go to that divert program because they fail to engage with it, and therefore they get charged. It does go to court, and we do see repercussions.
I think I will.
One of them what we decided we think that normally the last year during the month, it's really important that we have history for conversations.
I will follow that up with Tyrone directly and Aaron. As I said, it's been a bit of a period of change, and I don't want for anyone second anyone in the community to think that there's an inside of the weekend, etc. That's not the case. I'll follow that up and make sure that is carried through. In terms of Ramadan in general, we've got a Coventry raid last year. We had a big issue. I'm sure many of you have seen on the police. There's big policing response in the sense that we want to reassure the community that ultimately it's time to celebrate and do that safely, etc. And we're very invested in that as local neighbouring teams. So Small Heath, obviously, Coventry raid will be our priority, but Aston likewise will reflect those priorities as a Labour East constituency. So I apologise that you haven't heard anything, but I'll make sure I follow it up.
I think just picking up given that we've got an increase in hate crime, and we obviously know about that one incident, Stockholm, you have a lot of elements that will be environment. Will the police be strategizing how they assist the local community, maybe 3 grams, 2 months, advising how to work together with the other helping out with it?
Yeah, that is something that sounds very sensible again, and it's something that I don't know if that's what the Aston team specifically have in mind. Small Heath, we're doing a lot of outreach in terms of in the run up to Ramadan, how can we better support the community? What do they want from the police? Do they want to see a very visible presence? Do they not want to see a very visible presence? Because ultimately, we're there to reflect what the community wants at times. I know that in Aston, there's something called Operation Eternity, which is around antisocial behaviour. It's a Home Office funded project and money that's been put into it around police visibility and in relation to antisocial behaviour. But that's something that paying for that. If you've got a lot of people out on the street, potentially elderly, potentially more vulnerable, so that the investment would work towards that. So that is something that would happen. No, that's absolutely
work
fine.
together because whatever model you can work on, that can be probably another animal just in terms of say.
Yeah, we get a contact card. For Aaron's details. Yeah, community protection notices. Yeah, so would be helpful if I knew about that before. But in essence, where most recently in Aston where they've been used is Tesco's, like I alluded to earlier. I can't provide statistics off the top of my head. I know that in Aston and Tesco's, the traffic lights are the places that community protection warnings, community protection notices are being used. I will quite happily get your details and I'll come back to you with those stats directly in the next few days. I'll find them out for you. I didn't know about that before.
Dangerous. But just consequent to that, people which are at loss, one of the biggest problems we have is we have a lot of people which are going around houses and these roles, facial roles, where you get good cars, others tending to be and that's why I think police presence will be quite vital because general tendencies, most male, will be at mosque, and therefore households are susceptible. And I think some of that pattern emerged last year, but we've seen a lot of that happening now, where a lot of CCTV circulating on WhatsApp groups about this guy trying to break his home. Now, that is something which needs to be related outside now.
Yeah, 100%. That's the first thing I'm going to say. This sort of like community intelligence formulates how neighbourhood policing teams operate. If a resident says to me that I've got this, send it through, 100% send that through, because then we can respond to that. You guys are more visible in Aston than we are. We've got what 8 officers dedicated to Aston. Even if every single one of those officers was in Aston 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you guys would still see everything that happens. We probably wouldn't. You can't see everything as a police officer. We try our best to, and everyone wants to do that. But you guys are going to see things, report it, because then we can formulate that. Intelligence is brilliant. Police officer, I love intelligence. You can say, as a member of the community, report something to police, and then I can take action on it. I know that that's happened, or I know that that's going to happen, or whatnot. Without that intelligence base, without people from the community saying that we're aware of this, we're seeing this happen, is the CCTV, etc. It might not be a crime, it might not have happened yet, but it might be something that may happen, and we can see that and we can then act on it. So please do report things through like that. On the road traffic matters, road policing and Westminster Police is a focus. You've got dedicated road traffic officers that do work. They are they're not dedicated to specific areas, so they're a force team, and that does mean that they reflect a man in areas at different times. Things like burglaries, etc. Obviously, road policing is a vital cog in detecting those crimes, and therefore statistically will be where areas that are most affected by those at a certain time. we've had some terrible incidents most recently. Birmingham Live, the Soho Road incident was probably the most horrid one that I can think of. Road policing is definitely an investment for us. And we are aware of that. In general, personally, this is not from a police perspective, but I think the standard of driving in Birmingham is terrible. I don't think the police do enough to enforce on that. Too often, you see a police officer interact with a car, and because of the fact that we're busy doing something else, we're not necessarily carrying through and enforcing all the powers that we could be. And that is definitely something that me as a sergeant would be looking for my team to enforce on harder, and I know Aaron reflects those views as well. So at a local level, you probably will see us in every team enforcing road traffic offences. There's a PC called Charles on the team. His passion is road policing, that's what he wants to be. He wants to be a traffic officer, so he's very much out in the community. I know that's a very small scale, but he is there trying to enforce on that. So please rest assured that we are invested in that issue.
What we would like to see is well, I think that's what Aaron said that back.
But the thing that I do want to say is that the neighbourhood team is here to serve you guys, but we do have some decent demands, and obviously different issues are being raised. And it's a small team in the sense of 8 officers. We can't do everything at once, and I don't want to stand here and say, yeah, we're going to do that, we're going to do that, we're going to do that. We can't do it all at once, but that's why as a community, the things that matter most is what we want to be doing. Vulnerabilities, things like that around Ramadan, that makes perfect sense to me. We put dedicated patrols in. That probably does mean in that moment we're not enforcing on Whitton Road, or we're not enforcing on in New Town.
The reason why criminals know about Ramadan, they know that most males at a certain time, and it's getting hold of the calendar, which I'm sure almost because the timings are roughly the same. So that hour and a half, where males are all at most.
Yeah, and unfortunately, our sort of client base do exploit people, and that is very much. I'll definitely do that.
Yeah, I mean, maybe just start working together where we can have, neighborhood watch.
I know, I'm speaking out loud, but I know in Small Heath we do dedicated patrols once a month, so like people from Green Lane will come out with us. So if you guys would be willing to offer, I'm sure that they'd snap your hand off type thing. Yeah, you do know what you choose. Yeah. So in policing, there's multiple pathways that we've got that exist that aren't very visible. So in terms of sort of youth engagement, starting right off from schools, we've got dedicated school officers. So in Aston, PC Abley is the schools officer. Up until recently, PC Abley was the Labour schools officer. So that meant he covered 25 schools. He's now the Aston schools officer. That's now 13. That's much better. He can be a lot more visible. He can engage with people. That's one of the ways. Policing, neighbourhood policing, constantly striving to do things like youth engagement is massively important. Ultimately, it's a way for us to get out in the community and potentially solve issues before they happen. We work with people like speaking Aston locally now, like Aston football, like Aston Villa football, the kids program, etc. like that. We've got loads of pathways. We haven't been great at it because of the fact that for the last 12 months we've been on calls for service and we're not as invested as we should be. And ultimately that as a police service isn't great, and that's not what we want from a neighbourhood team. In terms of what we would like to do, what we do going into youth groups, things like that, if people go to the Aston neighbourhood team, I run this programme with XYZ kids on a Thursday or whatever, and say, look, we've got this, would you be able to come down? I've done that previously in small league, etc. We're not going to be able to be there every week because of the fact that in policing we've got multiple priorities, etc. But we do want to do that engagement. In terms of programs, we run like the cadets program, so people can come along and be part of West Midlands Police. I appreciate that that's not necessarily everyone's cup of tea at time because not everyone wants to walk around with the West Midlands Police logo on the vest, etc. But we do have a range of different programs, most of which aren't as visible as they should be, and that's a comms issue essentially. Get better at that. So. Now, 100% there's long-term investment in that. As I say, in terms of West Midlands Police comms and things that you'll see, if you're on Twitter or you're on Instagram, you will probably see we arrested and charged this man for burglary, or we had a pursuit with a traffic car and they stopped this car on the motorway. That's probably the most common thing you see from West Midlands Police. We're not great at that. We're offering this program. Would you guys want to come down? I know that in Aston, Newtown, and Burberry Park, we had an investment day where people could come down from, like residents could come down and you could see the drone there, you can see the dogs there, etc. That's things that we should be doing more as a neighbourhood team, and it's definitely one of Mr. Everett's priorities as a local inspector is that we are about community engagement and we will be pushing that forward. So events like that are massively important and we do want to invest with that. Me coming today, ultimately the Aston team aren't available, but we've got someone who can speak about Aston in that sense because we work locally with them. So coming to things like this, I think are massively important from an neighbourhood team. Actually, otherwise you guys wouldn't be talking to police right now. So those sort of things are what we're trying to do. We're not perfect, we're not going to get it right all the time, but feedback is essential. And if you've got brilliant ideas and you say, look, I think you should be doing this, and I'm quite happy to feed that back because I don't know everything. But yeah, that would be really helpful. No problem.
Any more questions?
Perfect. All right, thank you very much for your time, guys. I will, what I'll do, I'll just write down those details and I'll put them around from there.
Okay, so that brings us on to item 3. Selected license fee, private I suppose the starting point would be quite a lot of people were upset with the fees of licensing, but I'm sure you can add value as to what.
We'll try to justify it.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, councillors. Thank you for having us at your ward meeting today. My name's Laxmi. This is my colleague Wikas. We're here. No, that's fine. It's a fridge. Yeah, we're here today to talk to you. Please do say if you can't hear me. We're here today to talk to you about Birmingham's property licensing scheme. What I will say is, I know there's a lot going on at Birmingham City Council at the moment. I know there's a lot of things that people are worried about, but I can't sit here and speak on behalf of the council in terms of the other things going on. We are here to talk about property licensing. And councillors, you did raise some concerns that residents having with specific supported exempt properties. So I'll just very quickly touch on that. It's not our team, but we work closely with the supported exempt team. And from the name, the residents require support in the supported exempt properties. But they are also exempt, so they're exempt from licensing. However, in 2025, there's currently legislation going through the system that hopes to bring out licensing schemes for supported exempt property. So appreciate 12 months is a long time and it doesn't solve problems that you may be experiencing here and now. However, it has been recognised that there's almost a loophole in the legislation, and legislation always takes quite a long time to get, so that for in the future, there will be sort of a way to enforce against those properties. So my colleague will, I just wanted to introduce us. My colleague will take you through some background information on property licensing. Please just ask if you have any questions about the scheme, whether you're a tenant or a landlord or live next to a private rented property, and we'll do our best. Any questions we can't answer here and now, I will make a note and we will get the answers sent through, because there's always a few questions that we don't know how to answer. So thank you.
All right. Good evening, everyone. So I'm going to just brief you a little bit about the private rented sector, about the 3 schemes that's currently operating in Birmingham City Council. So the main one is the HMO mandatory, which is normally spearheaded by Deborah Mosley, who looks after the whole HMO, and that's citywide. So that's 5 or more people forming 3 or more households. They fall within the what we call the HMO mandatory, and they need to have a license. And on 5th of June 2023, we've introduced 2 additional schemes. One of them called HMO Additional, and that's citywide as well. And then the second one is the selective license scheme, which is purely targeted for family dwellings, so single household or two households with a maximum of 2 occupancy. So that's been running since 5th of June, and that's for a duration of 5 years, with the option of renewal as well, and also with the option of whether any extra ward will be added, but that's going to be at a later stage in year 3 or 4. That's when it's going to be decided. So I'll tell you a little bit about selective licensing scheme, a little bit also about the small HMO, which is the additional HMO, so that you guys are aware of it. And also, if you know any private rented tenant that are not meeting those conditions, please contact us, and we can deal with those under those licensing conditions as well. So the licensing scheme is under the Housing Act 2004. So Part 1 normally deals with HHSRS. So any disrepair issues within the private rented sector, we can deal with under Part 1 of the Housing Act. So this is HHSRS is a tool that we use to note of any disrepair. There are 29 hazards. And what we do, we assess the whole property, and then we contact the landlord or the license holder and tell them, look, these, and we serve them appropriate notices according to the disrepair level. So that's the Part 1 of the Housing Act 2004. The Part 2 is more to do with the mandatory licensing and the HMO additional. So that's making sure that the property is licensed. Once the property is licensed, then the license holder is bound to those licensing conditions. He has to adhere to those licensing conditions for the duration of the scheme. And then that falls up to Part 3. And Part 3 is our bread and butter. And that's the largest part of the scheme, which is the selective licensing scheme. So that's, as I said, single household family dwellings they have 16 conditions, and we'll forward you those conditions which the license holder has to adhere to. Any breaches to those licensing conditions, be it smoke detectors, waste, ASP issues, any documents that we request and they haven't provided, that is a breach of licensing condition, and there are further, we can penalize them further, which I'll I'll speak to it in my next slide. So the selective licensing scheme, the consultation itself started in January. So I'm just giving you a bit of background how the legislation started. So that's prior to the 5th of June 2023. So the consultation for the selective license scheme started in January 2021. And then we have to get approval from the Secretary of State via the Department for Levelling Up Houses and Communities to introduce. So we have to design the area, we get a report, and then we have to forward it to the Secretary of State for them to approve it. The scheme is based on improving deprivation and reducing crime in 25 wards of the city. And Aston, I believe, is one of those wards as well. So every private rented property within Aston needs to be licensed, either HMO, additional, or selective. Estimated to be 54,000 properties within the designated wards requiring a license. I'm going to provide you with the stats on a later on stage as to where we are at the moment with the whole scheme. And as I mentioned, the scheme went live on the 5th of June, and that's going to last for 5 years. There is a list of the 25 wards, and as I mentioned, Aston is one of them. Other wards are Ecox Green, Alum Rock. I mean, there's 25 wards. It's all on our website. Or I can forward it to you if you are interested in those 25 wards to know which one is licensing scheme. A little bit about the additional licensing scheme. So this is the smaller HMOs. Again, the consultation for that started in January 2021. We had to get approval from the Secretary of State, and the smaller HMOs made it's 3 or 4 occupants forming 2 or more households. And they should be sharing basic amenities like kitchen, bathroom, or toilet. So if they're sharing kitchen, bathroom, or toilet, and there's 3 or 4 occupants, and they're not related to each other, then that falls under the additional HMO license. Exempt, as I said, exempt is sorry, it's the exempt. Was it the exempt team that are the support exempt team? Yes, so they're exempted from the licensing at the moment, and the local authority believe that there are estimated 8,000 applicable properties in Birmingham that requires additional HMO license. Right, we're going to come down to the licensing fee. So 3 types of license, and we have 3 types of licensing fee. Let's start with the smaller one with the selective license. The licensing fee for selective license is £700, and that's for the duration of the 5-year scheme. Okay, and that's in 2 parts. So when the applicant makes an application for the license, he pays the first part, which is £375, and that covers the cost of the scheme. And then Part B fee, which is £325, and that covers the compliance. So that's us inspecting the property. So as part of having the license, we have to inspect those properties as well, making sure that they are adhering to those licensing conditions. The HMOs varies from 1,125 to 1,300, and that's based on the number of occupants. And additional licensing fee is £755. And again, that's in 2 parts, £325 for Part A and £430 for Part B. And again, that's for the duration of the 5-year scheme. If the scheme doesn't renew after 5 years, of course, you don't pay for that fee again. All right, there are certain exemptions from licensing. I'll just read you a couple of exemptions. So you guys are aware of what's exempted from licensing. So building controlled or managed by public bodies. So these are things like police, fire, NHS. So they are all exempted. Registered social landlord, they're all exempted. Building regulated otherwise, such as hospital, boarding school, mosque, things like that, exempted. Building occupied by the owner. So if the owner, of course, if the owner is living in the property, he's exempted from it. Property owners are exempted from it. However, there is a bit of a caveat. If there is 2 lodgers living with them, making a third of it, then that property does become licensable under the Housing Act 2004. As I mentioned, building occupied by religious communities, such as prayer halls, education, or the relief of suffering. Student, hall of residence, they are exempted. Now, hall of residence that are owned by the education establishment. So if university owns them, then they are exempted. But if they're private, those big companies that have large student accommodation, they need to have a license. Okay. And also if someone has submitted something called a temporary exemption notice, where we believe that you don't require a license for 3 months, you can apply for something called a temporary exemption notice. And that gives you relief from the licensing. We only grant if you don't need a license after 3 months. Okay. So as I mentioned, as of 5th of June, legally a license is required, or at least a duly made application should be submitted. And enforcement of policies in identifying and finding non-compliant individual has been live from 4th of September 2023. But this has been pushed back, and we've been starting since the 1st week of January. So we have started doing compliance. We have started inspecting properties. Not having applied for a license could mean the landlord is at risk of civil penalties, prosecution, banning orders, additional licensing condition and civil penalty notices, which are put twice, so I do apologize. Right. I'm going to give you a little bit of overview on the compliance side. So as I mentioned, we started from 1st of January. We are doing Part 3 inspections, so all the properties that have license, we are inspecting those. Property that haven't licensed the property, we are also investigating those properties as well. We have received information from councillors as well, from different wards, that there are, they're posing some risk of antisocial behaviour and things like that. So we are doing some investigation and inspections during in those specific areas as well. As of January, we have inspected 435 properties, and around 20% of them is a breach of licensing condition. And as I mentioned, unlicensed properties, it is a criminal offence to privately rent a property without the appropriate license, and we can issue you with a civil penalty notice of up to £30,000 for renting a property without a license. And also, there's something called rent repayment order. If your property is not licensed, a tenant can claim something called a rent repayment order, so they can backdate the last 12-month payment as well from the landlord as well. So which goes through the first-year tribunal. Last two slides, just giving you a little bit of statistic about Aston. Sorry, let's start with citywide, and then I'll give you Aston. So citywide, we have received, as of 1st of March 2024, we have received 27,673 applications, of which 13,479 are either draft license issued or final license issued. So we still got about 13,000 applications, which we are working currently on processing to issue the final license. And 2,235 applications submitted for additional HMO license as well, for which 924 draft or final license have been issued. And as for Aston, so this is from 28 February 2024. We have received 602 applications so far from Aston, 602. Of which 344 draft or final license has been issued. We are estimating a number of private renters properties, about 1,650. So we're still expecting about 1,000 applications. So we will be doing a lot of compliance work around Aston. So 557 applications submitted. That's for selective license, and 19 for additional HMO. And we've issued in total for selective and additional 244. Okay. Any question? Please visit the website, private rented sector website on Birmingham Gov, or you can contact us at pl@birmingham.gov.uk. We also have an email address, which is straightforward, which is pl@birmingham.gov.uk. And that can be any issue related to private rented properties, and we'll just take it from there.
If you give us the email.
Of course, yeah.
We do have a presentation that we'll have to share as well, because we've got some nice sort of graphs and things with statistics and all our contact details are on there as well, if you're interested. Obviously, any questions, we're happy also to answer them now.
Just in relation to Aston, well, I've just put figures in, the sort of money that the council generates from these licenses, close to £500,000. That's at this stage, potentially, and then if we get another 500 odd properties, that runs into about £1 million. What happens with that £1 million?
So
Other than employment of staff, which do the work, yeah. But is there any plan that any surplus should be used to enhance the area or something like that?
Sure. So just in case anyone is sort of worried about the financial side, I know this, I will come on to your question in a moment. The money generated by the scheme can only be used for the delivery of the scheme. So obviously Birmingham is in some financial trouble at the moment. This scheme does not assist the council in any of the debt that it has, because by law, and rightly so, the money that landlords pay goes directly back into the delivery of the scheme. So yes, one of the major costs is staff. I think how many in the departments? It's about 130 people employed, or we haven't fully recruited yet because the recruitment takes some time. But there's, and obviously an officer's salary, so it covers the salary of officers, of course, but all the on costs. So if an officer earns £25,000, it actually costs the council 40,000 to employ them with sort of pension, etc. So it's not just that's just an example for you. Things like the accommodation for the officers, mileage, officer salary, all of the work that had to be done. So legally, during the consultation and to advertise the scheme, advertising is really expensive. So all of those costs have to be included in that, because also the other way around is the scheme. So our section cannot use any of the council's money. So if we didn't have enough money, we couldn't turn around to the council and say, oh, we need more money for this. We won't be given it. It has to be self-funding.
Now, just going on from that question, on a citywide basis, we're looking at around, rough calculations, about 20 million. I don't know about
Yeah.
But when we look at the sort of properties that eventually can be supported, and the cost of employing staff, like just another calculation, somewhere in the 5 million. Let's say another 5 million in terms of whatever the expenses could be, travel, office, and so on. That still leaves about 10 million. Surely the council must have some plan. If there's any surplus money, where should that be invested? Sitting ring fence or staffing costs?
The money is ring fenced, but not it's for any delivery of the scheme. So whatever we can do so initially it's on the money is being spent on obviously officers processing the licenses. That's number one. Then it's compliance, so ensuring properties are compliant and landlords are complying with those conditions. But obviously there may be a lot of enforcement work with that, so obviously all of that will be covered. After that, it may be that there's targeted work. It really depends on what we find. So it might be certain areas need more targeted work, others may not. There is a really complicated spreadsheet of the breakdown of cost of how the license fee has been decided. I don't have it to hand, but it's not just a number plucked out of thin air. It is a very comprehensive document, which I can get some further detail on.
I just want to ask you a question. I mean, this is a pilot scheme, is it? Or is it a rollout across the whole of Birmingham involving every private rented accommodation?
So it's not a pilot. Right. So it is so it's within the Housing Act 2004.
Yeah.
And we've council, sorry, not specifically, put forward to be part of the scheme, and that's been signed off. So the selective license, which is every rented property, that's in 25 wards of the city, Aston being one of them, and we've got the list.
And just touching on that, sorry to keep.
No, please go ahead.
We both myself and Councillor Munter were not in post. We haven't been elected when the scheme was approved and process. And certainly, I suspect the residents in Aston were most likely unaware of this scheme. And whilst everybody appreciates the importance of having safe, private rented dwellings, a lot of landlords, certainly which own properties in Aston, that rent not to exempt properties because they're of course exempt, but they rent out to families and vulnerable families to that extent, which don't charge an enormous amount of rent because they're also concerned about families and the means for families. And there may be some very, very, old tenants of a particular landlord. They feel that there's been enormous discrimination in terms of how the council has selected 25 wards, which in the main seem to be inner city areas, but I can understand that, there is obviously some sort of research that has been conducted. But I can't seem to disabuse the concern which they have raised, saying that this was a means to discriminate against certain wards, primarily inner city wards. And so, what would you say to that proposition?
A few things. So if I start with how the wards were selected, and I don't have exact figures, there is a consultation document in the public interest, so I can get them for you, but I don't know them off the top of my head. So the wards for the selective licence, because obviously additional citywide, the selective licence ward, so the main purpose of the licensing scheme is to reduce crime, deprivation and antisocial behaviour. That is the aim of the scheme. In 4.5 years, that's what we as a department have to show we've achieved. So we want to reduce crime, reduce deprivation, and social behaviour. Sorry, that
Although you keep.
sorry, can you?
Yeah,
Sorry,
sorry. No, I mean, I'll follow on from that because I think. It's
Yeah, okay,
important,
yeah, I've got
because
lots of
because
favourite
the
others.
residents here would say, yeah, well, let me finish it, then she won't and then we'll open the floor. But the residents in Aston would say,
Yeah, say that again, thank you.
reducing crime, deprivation, and antisocial behaviour is not going to be impacted by this particular model because the properties that are causing concerns are exempt properties. And so when you say you've got this money which is ring fenced, and I suppose the better question is, would that money be available to assist in, for example, exempt properties and reducing antisocial behaviour and reducing other problems?
No, in short, the money from the licensing scheme has to be spent on the additional and selective. If the new legislation does come in, that will deal with the supported exempt. What I would say to landlords though is the majority, this is not a punishment for landlords. So if you're a landlord and you're a good landlord and you're doing everything you should be, yes, there is a cost to you for the scheme, but that cost is to deal with the landlords that are not doing what they're supposed to be doing, and that to cover the enforcement of those landlords. So it's to level the playing field and to, because otherwise landlords who aren't making sure the property's safe, are just taking cash off their tenants, not doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Oh,
sorry.
But I think
So
I think the problem does come, but a lot of landlords which are not being penalised, which live in or have homes outside of the 25 areas, are benefiting. But let Mumtaz.
Okay, so say for argument's sake, you've got a house, 4-bedroom house, you've got a family, a big family that's renting that house for about say £1,200 pounds, and it's a family, and you know very well that a family living in a 4-bedroom house is not going to cause much problem. If you have a house that's 4 bedrooms and it's rented out to 4 different individuals, and someone's making 2,500 out of that property, then surely it should be the amount of income that's generated from that property, and according to that, they should get licensed.
Well, there's two ways you can look at it, because so when we came with the licensing fee, every local authority adopted completely different ways of coming with the licensing fee. Some said if you go higher EPC, then you should be paying less. If you have your EICR checks done, you should be paying less. And so you can have a different model with the licensing fee. But with Birmingham City Council, they adopted one fee for all kind of thing. So everyone will pay a standard fee regardless whether it's 1 bedroom or 4 bedroom, just to have this safe for all of them. So it still brings questions, but that's what they adopted for.
There are lots of different ways, that could have been adopted for the fee.
Okay, sorry.
Oh, lots of questions.
You, Javed, and then Jab, and then Javier. So just one thing.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to actually understand what you're saying. All intention of this organization is money made for this scheme is not going into overall life. Also, in terms of what actual requirements are you doing?
Sorry, say that again.
In terms of actually in the house getting the licenses, what are you offering house? I know you said something about 3 or 4 and sharing what are the requirements?
So to answer the second part, if it's in one of the 25 wards of the selective licence, Aston being one of them, it's any rented property. For additional licensing, it's four people.
3 or 4 people.
3 or 4 people forming 2 or more households. So if you had 4 people, but you're all a family for additional, then you wouldn't be included. And how we check that, I think, is sort of what you're getting at, is we go in and look. So our officers will go in and take the evidence. So there's sort of telltale signs, if you like, for HMOs, things like 4 different types of cereal or locks on doors. The way a HMO operates is not always, but often in 4 different cupboards is often quite different. Locks on the outsides of the doors, even little things like no shampoo and conditioner in the bathrooms because everyone takes their own. So there's a number of that. They're not the only ones.
My children do that all the time. Well, let's just, we want to wrap this up shortly, so I just want to give everybody an equal chance. Just one second.
I just asked the lady if it's been announced. It has to be announced. So if it's going to be announced, they're going to move all the evidence, aren't they?
Okay, just before you, can I bring the lady? In fact, Jab, had your hands up first, then you.
When we're doing the inspections,
Jab?
So for
after inspection, yes, unannounced.
I'll clarify. Do you want me
Yes.
to clarify now or
Question from the back, Jab.
What is the exemption not included in this?
Legislation.
So the evidence has been being gathered, and Birmingham is we know it is an epicentre for the supported exempt. It hasn't yet been included. The Act is from 2004, and obviously when the legislation came out in 2004, this supported exempt wasn't a problem. So new legislation is hopefully coming out in 2005, specifically to deal with supported. Yeah.
I mean, the aim of it is here to reduce crime first and foremost, okay, and look at compliance. Local authority, Birmingham City Council regulates their notice where they fail on that. Okay, so you know there's an issue with the biggest provider.
Sorry, say that again. I can't. Yeah, sorry. Start that again.
Social housing. Registered social landlord.
Registered social landlords, yeah.
They are the biggest provider of housing. Okay, so surely they should be taken into consideration when you start rolling it out throughout the city, because the biggest crime stats, okay, should be from the biggest landlord itself. So where have you got these stats from if you haven't included the biggest?
So the law doesn't allow us to, or any local authority, not just us, any local authority to include registered social landlords, because they are regulated differently. So they have their own in-house teams. So it's a bit like the supported exempt, or because they're regulated in a different way, the legislation doesn't cover them.
It's a very good point, Jab. I think Jab makes a very good point in that one of the biggest failings that we've seen are in the larger organizations, but they essentially have been exempt from the sort of rules because supposedly there's internal procedures which allow them to not be governed in the same way. But very good question. I think the law, it should be. I agree with you. I think that
the regulator of social housing looks at RSLs, but if you're a local authority, you're exempt from that as well.
And here we have some major failures. Yeah, I mean that's a housing issue. We'll have.
I don't necessarily disagree.
No, I think we'll have an housing officer at the next meeting to show some of the concerns. This lady here, and then you.
Yeah, just about you know how you guys said this licensing is going to be reducing violence, antisocial behavior. But if that money is not going to be spent, how are you going to be doing that? In what terms? How are you going to be reducing the violence? How are you going to be reducing the antisocial? And you said you're covering 25 wards. Why particularly that 25 wards? Why not outside? I mean, I live in Aston, and I'm a homeowner right now, but you're putting me off now. So are we all? I mean, people living in those wards. Why are we being punished for? So who decided these 25 wards, and why are the residents? I mean, I didn't know this license going on. So why hasn't all this been published? And even if it has, why hasn't it come through my door or through my ears? I'm a homeowner. I've been a homeowner for more than 5 years now.
No, but are you a homeowner renting?
No, but I'm planning to do it, but I was not aware of any of this. Yeah. So are you not? When is the published? How are you publishing it?
So
and just what saying, I totally agree, and the guy over there, he's mentioned that, but he just, I don't know if you heard it or not, but you know how you say you're gonna reduce that, the anti-social.
That's the aim of the scheme,
Yeah,
yeah.
so if is that what, so exactly what's, so you know the money is literally, it's not helping any of us, is it? It's not helping the residents, it's not helping anyone. But I'm just saying, you know the licenses, why these 25 wards? Why not the whole of Birmingham, the whole of West Midlands? Why are we, in particular, those 25 wards, why are we pinned onto that? Because maybe what it's like, you know, you did the crime, but this whole group is labeled. So why are we all labeled for it? I mean, who makes that choice? Who made that choice? And when they made the choice, I mean, everyone, there's always a bad apple in the tree. So why is the whole tree being blamed on it? So, you know, and regarding your publishing, I've not even heard of you. If I didn't come here today, I wouldn't have heard of you. So a lot of people are probably not even aware of you.
Okay. So I'll start with the 25 wards. They, so lots of different data sources were pulled on how to select them. And the main ones were crime data, deprivation data, but also percentage of private rented properties in a ward. So wards, for example, like the jewellery quarter is subject to licensing because they've got a high number of private rented properties. So the decision was crime, deprivation, percentage of private rented properties. We couldn't do the whole of Birmingham. We couldn't do the whole of West Midlands because obviously it's run by local authorities. So Birmingham City Council obviously has no jurisdiction over Samwell or Dudley. But the nature, not under selective licensing. So the nature of selective licensing, you can't designate. You have to select. You can't designate the whole of 69 wards of Birmingham under a selective licensing.
It's based on evidence, so it was based on those evidence.
I'll come back to that.
But
I want to get this question.
Yeah, of course.
So let's get this question.
Why is there landlords to check? You have problem tenants. You have somewhere where you can report antisocial behavior.
Have services for antisocial behaviour. Landlords have to take responsibility for their
I think
tenants.
that's a little unfair. If the council's charging, just one second, council, just one second, council's taking £700, and then they're saying to the landlord, well, you check for antisocial behaviour. I think that's a little, well, I mean, look, it is, obviously.
They don't have to check for antisocial behaviour. But they're not causing. Okay. So that would be
It's
like
a policy, yeah. So the policy in place for antisocial behaviour rather than.
The landlord, I don't want to say, oh, there's a tenant that's antisocial. So what's my next step?
So what you need to do? Do you mean, or?
What do I need to do?
Yeah. So we're currently, we've had this question quite a lot because obviously landlords are concerned about how to deal with if they do get a bad tenant. So we're putting together a guide, but ultimately the landlord can do everything from verbal warning, written warning, up to and including eviction of the tenants.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. The point is
That's
that
why
if the question is
No,
that if the council participated and assisted the landlord in making sure that they could get them evicted, then at least they're seeing value for money. But if you're saying, well, you as a landlord must do it, well, the landlord can do that anywhere. The chances of the landlord wants to get anybody committing antisocial.
No, that's because, and that's what a good landlord would say. As I said, the scheme is not designed to punish good landlords. It's for those landlords that aren't dealing with it.
But at the moment, the landlord
no, yeah.
But let me just come to this because I want to wrap this up, and I just want to take this final question of it.
No, my understanding is, the same way we have fee that we charge, right? We have a kind of cost of living price. Cost that down to the tenant.
I think a lot of
the rules around rent increases.
So it's an expense in it, but obviously already the rents are going through the roof, right? Somebody on a minimum wage can't afford permanent.
Well, no, it's 700 over 5 years. I just want to wrap this one topic up because I think, number one, it's something that has been approved and something which is on the roll. Both myself and Councillor Montez are saying we're not elected at the time. I could assure you if we had been, we would have vehemently opposed it because I think that the way the council has gone about identifying Aston is very wrong, purely because I don't see private landlords who rent to private families having families that are causing antisocial behaviour. And that's the distinction. That's the distinction because yes, Aston has its problems. We have deprivation, we have antisocial behaviour, we have small crime, but that is emanating out of exempt properties, and it's not every exempt property. It's some where we're seeing repeat offending. And so, if the council, if obviously you've got your department, and one of the key aspects is to make sure that every household that is rented within the Aston area is safe. Now, I don't think anyone would argue against that. Fire alarms, smoke alarms, those sort of things I think are vital. But I think the council really needs to look at the money which it's raising and then working in collaboration with the exempt properties team, to collaborate with them, sorry, that's the word, and then to have a plan, because if the overriding objective is to reduce crime, deprivation, antisocial behaviour, it must be done. And I'm not talking in partner agencies with multi-agents, I'm talking within the council. We need to be able to work together to assist local communities in getting rid of that. And you are not going to hit your targets, I promise you. You're not going to hit your targets if you think that in Aston, because it was selected, we're going to look at just those private rented properties to families, and that's going to somehow reduce the antisocial behaviour. It's not. I can tell you that I live in Aston. Councillor Montez lives in Aston, and we can see problems firsthand. So there needs to be that, and that may be something which is useful for you to take back and say, look, we need to just revisit this and just look at how we could work with other agencies within the council, with the police, because this is just a scheme that we've looked at the stats, but the stats are not going to marry up, because I can tell you there's a lot of landlords that rent out to private families which are absolutely perfect, right? In terms of how the families are, they're not causing any problems.
I don't disagree with that statement at all. The majority are.
Okay. I'm just
I just wanted to add to that point. If this whole scheme fails, what is the support that you're going to have?
Well, I'll answer that question. The scheme won't fail because the money is in the council's pocket, if I could use that expression. And I think we'll get some good out of it. I don't think we're not going to, for example, safety. If the officers make sure that each household is private rented, safe, it meets all the necessary requirements, I think that's an advantage. But I think a lot of landlords, in actual fact, because it's legislation and law anyway, so I think a lot of landlords have already ensured. I know that 25%, they said it's breaching 25%.
20%.
20%, forgive me. But I think a lot of landlords spend a lot of money to make sure they've got all the necessities, life support, smoke alarms. So I think that's important, and that's something which they do. Final question, and then wrap it up. I think we're going to.
So at the moment, we identified 54,000
So no, to answer your question, but it's because those landlords are not coming forward. So our next phase of work is to go out and find the properties where landlords haven't applied for a license. So we know and it's from a range of different sources of data. However, almost every licensing scheme, that's an underestimation. So part of our role is to ensure fairness to those landlords who have applied, who have paid their fee. We will go and find them. Sorry, say that. Yeah.
What are the penalties?
Well, I was going to ask that question. I mean, can we, where we have landlords that had no information, is there a discretion to say, look, this is a scheme and you're not going to be penalised, but you need to get on to the license scheme?
Yeah.
Or is there?
Oh, it's not. So if we say we find a landlord, or if there's a landlord here today who genuinely says, I didn't realise, you submit a licence, you won't be penalised.
Okay.
There is no However, if we find you, if you like, and you say, oh, no, I'm not doing it, I don't agree with the scheme,
Yeah.
I'm not going to licence, that's when the fines and penalties come in. If you didn't know, and that's why we only so those figures, we only started the visits midway through January to allow landlords a 6-month bedding in period, because we accept, we had leaflets dropped through the whole of Birmingham a couple of times, but we're never going to reach everyone. We've got landlords who live in London or in Scotland who we're never going to reach everyone, and we accept that. But we are doing what we can to sort of promote the scheme and let landlords know, such as being here today. But no, there's no penalty.
So it's already got the okay then?
It was already approved.
Oh.
This scheme was already approved. And that's why I kept saying that.
Sneaky.
I just want to make sure that residents here realise that this scheme was passed before we were elected in 2022. We were elected in 2022. So this scheme, and had it been raised, just like when I was a councillor many years ago, I did hold events. The Aston Villa no parking and parking permit scheme. We held events for the community, and it may have been that this was something during COVID, and possibly that could have been a reason as to why elected members didn't go out there with the community, get some consultation with them. But we are where we are at, and what I think as a local councillor I would like to see now is whatever money is generated actually delivers. But that, in my opinion, can only be delivered through work with the exempt properties team, crime reduction, and so forth. We're stuck. We can't change it.
I think also it's a bit. I think because it's an infancy state as well at the moment. It's only been 10 months into the scheme. I think it's too early to tell whether it's successful or not. So we have got 30 compliance officers. We are start doing the inspection. We are going to every other property that smoke detectors are not working. They are breaching licensing conditions. Unlicensed property, just like I said, we only receive 600 from Aston at the moment, which means another 1,000 are non-compliant in Aston at the moment. So
and that's from the data that we have.
That's from the data.
The problem we got with that and I'll say people quite short, but the other problem which we got with that is a lot of landlords which have got private families there are now resorting to either saying, well, you need to pay us more rent. Families are already struggling, so they risk losing their properties. And other landlords will be evicting those families and converting those properties into exempt properties. And so
they can't. Sorry, can I just sorry to interrupt, but just one of the, and whether you're a landlord or a tenant, you may say, but we see one of the benefits is if someone has not got a license, they cannot evict their tenant. Well, so there is protection for the tenant.
But let's assume for a moment someone decides now, I want to evict my tenant because I want to sell my property.
Yeah.
And therefore, I suspect that landlord would be exempt because he's going through eviction.
No.
No.
If they're not licensed, you cannot. A landlord cannot evict. It's illegal. So when those tenants present at the homeless centre or any council services try to get on the waiting list, the landlord, by our private tenancy unit, is told you're not allowed to. The law is to have a license. If you don't have a license, you can't legally evict your tenant.
All right. Well, can we thank you for coming and we're not. Molly, oh sorry, I didn't see.
For the landlord, are you actually expecting that come in as a tenant? Because if there is actually crime and you're talking about trying to stop that, surely that's not. You seem to be expecting that to have criminal landlords, but how do you address the tenant?
We address the. Not from us. So one of the requirements that is put on the landlord is they need to vet their tenant, and that's for the safety of their property as well. They obviously don't want a tenant who's not going to pay rent or is going to trash the property. You know, it's the landlord doesn't want that. Yeah. Of course. So part of the application, and please correct me if I've got this wrong, is we moving forward, and this is not for existing tenants because it would be unfair to require this of existing tenants, but landlords will have to get references from previous sort of rental companies. They'll have to get what are the other things?
Well, just making sure that all the checks. Yeah.
Checks and balances on the tenants.
And that in itself
So a very long
separate
process.
You know, a lot of people maybe, yeah, well, this is the thing, CRB checks and stuff, would that be required?
Not under the licensing
I mean,
scheme.
a lot
no.
of this I think is extremely, I think this is a lot, I think it's.
No, but you know, the problem is, you know, like in Melrose Road, you got quite a few properties that are rent.
Melrose.
Melrose Road, yeah. What happens, the tenants are changing, if you want, every time a tenant moves out, they dump everything outside. And then, when you report it to the agent, because I've never seen the tenant at home. They give the house to an agent to rent it out. When you report it to the agent, they don't do nothing about it.
Okay.
And when you rent it, when you ring the house owner, say your tenant, it's not my problem, I give it to an agent.
And that's exactly and that's one of the benefits that report it to us. So we're going to leave our details. That is exactly the kind of situation. So waste and recycling is one of the conditions as well. So if you have got a landlord who's just, a constant churn of tenants, that is the kind of situation that licensing schemes will try and address. Say that again, sorry. It depends on the specific issue. So,
And also, who would be responsible? I mean, where you've got a landlord who's giving it to an estate agency, and then an estate agency deals with all of the sort of tenants and what needs to happen and making sure the property's secure. So, well, it's not necessarily something, but what happens in those circumstances?
So we've had a few of these recently. So so some landlords will say to their man, it depends on there's different levels that you can pay for with the managing agent. So you could they just find a tenant, or there's full management and everything in between.
Yeah.
So it depends on the specific agreement between the.
So it's full management.
It depends who the license holder is.
I think
So if
ultimately,
it's the managing agent, then it's them. So if you're as a landlord, if that's what the package you pay for.
Yeah, then that's what you do.
Yeah, and that's a landlord decision. We would.
Okay. I'm gonna.
If I have a house and I rent it out, say, a three-bedroom house, I rent it out to an individual, and they've decided to let individual rooms out.
That's a breach of tenancy. That's a breach of
So
tenancy.
so one, you've got a breach of tenancy, but we would expect you as the landlord to be doing, whether it's yearly check, whatever you have decided. But then we would say, ring us. If you go and actually you thought you were renting to a family, you go and we have this exact situation that we've been investigating last week. And suddenly there's a load of people there and you've got absolutely no idea, you're still receiving your rent, but actually, who are these people? It's in a mess. That's where our privacy
Or you go to the region, they have a license factory.
No, it's a breach.
You have,
because
but
it's incorrect license, then.
But if it's a problem you're experiencing, if you come to us, we will assist you. It's not that you've put in 10 people and have just applied for a selective. There's a difference.
I think there's two things, just two very quick things. The first thing, we are working with the landlords. We're not working against the landlords, for example. As long as you can evidence that you guys are doing all the good work, we're not going to go and penalize you.
We're not here for good luck.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And second, just
a win-win situation.
Well, exactly. And secondly, yeah, because I worked in Nottingham City Council for 5 years, doing exactly the same thing from day one till year 5, and I've seen the improvement within Nottingham City Council.
The license, no. So how the license, no. So no, it's not. We don't have to take enforcement to make money. That is to be absolutely clear on that. The fee covers the cost. Do you want me to give you your details? Yeah.
Now, item 4 is local updates, council updates, local issues. Now, just in terms of council update, I think one of the biggest concerns on which the residents will have is what's going to be passed. That meeting takes place tomorrow. I'm sure many of you have read in the newspapers or social media the sort of black hole that's been created in the council's finances. It's going to be devastating in my view. You probably read about council tax being increased, you probably read about fortnightly bin collections as opposed to and there's a lot of information out there, but that's going to be decided in tomorrow's budget meeting. So, I think everybody just needs to brace themselves because we're expecting it to be quite difficult, and it's undoubtedly going to be cutting across all of the services. Libraries, we've already got a petition going in Aston. Mumtaz saying has along with the local residents started a little bit of a campaign, and I just fear that it's going to be quite brunt.
Why do we have to? Why do we have to have the brunt of it?
Well,
And we've been telling them for years of not upgrading the city centre so much. I mean, the Uzi and the jacuzzi should have our own postcode by now.
Without being political, I suppose we should be looking to invest more in the country than out of the country in wars and so forth. But unfortunately, that's the state of democracy, and that's the state of our local council. And
some of the things I commend the chief engineer roads and stuff. The amount of money they spent on cycling.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, look, it's a sad fact of reality that a council is created in terms of politicians through elections, a democratic process, and politicians make decisions. And if those decisions are not right, then the communities hear about those decisions, they know who made those decisions, and they act accordingly. All I can say is that some of one of the biggest problems was equal pay. The other one was this Oracle IT system, and that seems to be where the black hole has been created. But whatever the rights and wrongs, the community will be looking at what the budget meeting concludes. Both myself and Councillor Mumtaz Hussain will obviously be arguing that areas like Aston, which have amongst the highest deprivation, we need to look at services in a way that does not drastically make our
But they don't see the severeness of it. It's either heating or eating. Now it's going to be neither now.
Well, I appreciate what you're saying, and I think it comes back to that one point which I think I constantly make, and that is we are where we are at.
But it's not fair.
It's not fair. Of course, I agree with you. The leadership in the council are ultimately responsible. The executive, because if you are in control, then you must also be accountable.
That's right.
And that accountability, I'm afraid, will no doubt play its part in the democratic process. But that's going to be the biggest update for local residents as to the budget tomorrow. So it's not going to be good reading, but I will disseminate whatever information I can through WhatsApp and so forth. You've probably got most of it from news outlets anyway. I mean, are there any pressing local? Sorry, you wanted to come in? I was going to say, are there any pressing local issues which the community have, which you want to address, so that I can make a note of them? When you say include the Commonwealth area, what do you mean? Do you mean? Are you talking about the flats? Right. I think what's currently been discussed and maybe close to implementation was a sale of the whole site to a private organisation because the council wants to wash its hands of the community. Well, I mean, obviously, I'm not a party to that discussion, but I would hope and certainly think that because it doesn't fall within the Aston ward, but it impacts Aston because it's right next door. But my aspiration would be that even if it gets sold to a private organisation, if it does actually get sold to a private organisation, there ought to be a condition that there needs to be a proportion of properties, not just for businesses to come in, private businesses to come in and sell and make profit. So there needs to be some give back to the local social housing. So that would be my certain aspirations. does benefit. Whether that happened or not, I can't say, but. Say again, sorry? Well, I mean, like I said, as a Liberal Democrat council, we're backbenchers. All we can do is say, look, yeah, raise it and say, look, this is what we need. Ultimately, for the administration as to how they see fit. But you know, their key objective at this moment in time, no doubt, would be to raise as much money as possible can. Good question. Yeah, I can have this lady first.
Well, my main concern, the reason why I'm making is regarding the road safety. I know obviously we have lots of accidents, but I'm literally very, very concerned about my children now, because I live on Park Lane. So on Park Lane, we only got one traffic light on one end and one traffic light on the other end. And every week, literally, there is major accidents.
Oh, we've had one recently.
Major accidents. My daughter, she walks to school by herself. She's come back home telling me when they're crossing the traffic light, it's red, but the cars are not stopping.
That's right.
So she had to run backwards. Now I have to, even in this condition where my daughter, my children, like they go to mosque as Sufa, I'm so scared to let them cross that road because red light is there, but people are not stopping.
Well, I mean, can I just say this, please? You've got my contact details. When you have problems like that, just WhatsApp me straight away because that's
the only thing that I'm not to you, like to Birmingham City Council, if I was to raise it to them. I mean, ourselves, we had not so many no entry roads. I've been into those ways and I see cars coming in the opposite direction. I have aggressive drivers. I'm on the right, but I'm a lady on my own, and on the opposite is 4 youngsters. I don't know what they're carrying. I don't know what they're tempting. So I'm on the right, but what I do is I go onto the side, park up, and let them go. So instead of all that being used, why wouldn't that money could have been spent on something else better? I mean, it hasn't helped. Lozans hasn't done any better.
I know that hasn't helped, but can I just say, in relation to what you've just raised, anything like that, please report it, but report it to both myself and Councillor Moses the same. I can say that, you know, we had a problem with the traffic lights at Victoria Road and Upper Sutton Street, the crossover.
Yes, that's it.
Where the lights weren't working at all. And we had a member of the community actually go in high vis, and he was policing the junction during an Aston Villa football match, where the police officers were actually, you know, driving through and saying, well done, good job. And that's not what you'd expect. You'd expect the police officers to say, well, actually, this is not a function of a resident. This is a function of the police.
Yeah, so about 2 or 3 years ago, I'm sure you've heard, you know, the lady that she literally died on my road. We're watching through the window, and I mean, how am I supposed to sleep when my kids are walking to school by themselves? You know, I had to drag my son up because the car's beeping at me. It's red light, I'm crossing, and he's beeping at me. And you can't even go and address those people because nowadays you don't know what people are carrying with them. You don't know what's going to come.
All I can say is, please,
I'm not scared,
report,
it's not safe.
but it's not worth doing that. Just report it to us, and we'll see what we can do. Obviously, there's a channel for you to report directly to the council, but also, in addition, report it to us.
Yeah, but you can go so far. It's like what I said to the police officer. You can report it till you're blue in the face and nothing's been done. But I would like to say that basically for the next meeting, they're not going to do anything. They're not going to do anything. Believe you me, they're not going to do anything. But to me, back to me, it's just more likely. Can we have a person that's from the traffic from the city council for next meeting, please?
Yeah, I'll make that request because we need someone to come and address this particular point. I will find.
What I'm seeing in the last few days, the council actually sending people to us for food passes right now. Focus on and they stop all the right now for any food bank. So normally they would have some supporting system or something. Right now, in the last week alone, 16 close to the council. They have nothing out there to support people who eat food. And it is really disturbing because we're trying, the third sector trying to plug this gap in, and we will do it as best we can. I don't think we can sustain this kind of.
Well, I mean, I think we ought to raise that because, you know, it's one thing working, you know, in collaboration with community organisations, but it's completely another where the council should not be simply saying, well, we can make a saving here, push it solely to the community. That's not how it should work.
And the second thing was young people. So with all of young people explain that part of the ceremony, maybe a lot of stuff. It is anything from like I know the library, we try to say the library, we are doing the same thing. They're building that they're flying alone and doing nothing.
I
We
think
are really keen on this.
what I will say to that is, I know that one of the best things historically was the community taking responsibility over an asset, community asset transfer and putting it to use. In this climate, everything, in my view, will be hitting because the council is in such a dire situation. It needs to raise, you know, thousands of pounds. You think when you've got millions to raise, there's still what thousands, because thousands make 100,000, make millions. So everything is being put out to the market, and it's being put out to the open market as opposed to, you know, seeking, you know, the balance between what a community organisation can afford and whether we don't have to necessarily make profit. I think that exercise is out the window. The sole purpose now is to put properties into the auction and get whatever money they can. And that's the hard facts of certain circumstances we find ourselves. I think McCann wanted to just close the meeting.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, with the situation with Birmingham City Council at the moment, my heart really does sink, and especially for the people in Aston. I mean, 95% of my casework is fly tipping, and when someone like Mushkura, and Adil and Javed, when we get pillars of the community leaders like this come to me and say to me, what can we do to help? It's like a lifeline for me. You know, the ladies that came here, we went on a little walk around in Aston, and these ladies are helping me to do litter picking, you know, and you know, I'm so grateful because for me, I mean, I can go blue in the face. We asked waste management to come here today to answer some questions that didn't come, and I just feel as us council are getting the rope under the stick. You know, residents are phoning us. You know, there's rubbish here. There's things being dumped here, and Aston is one of the highest ones in the whole of Birmingham. So I just like to say, people like Javed, Adil, and Mashkura. Mashkura, can we have you say a few things, please? Yes, please.
I think what I'm looking at the moment is government more exercise around understanding what some of the needs are of the local residents. So I'm talking to a number of organisations working with the council. Rather than we know the city's broke. I think a lot of the solutions are within our communities. What can we actually do? I'm just listening to the council as the city. This wouldn't be the conversation that we're having at they do things to bring like ours. I think it's really important that communities come together and find some of the solutions. Just spending a bit of time to understand what can we do. Quick fix, quick wins, you know, and then put a long-term strategy. So I'll just come to you as well.
My suggestion is to organize what we need to do is mobilize the mosque, because everybody will go to the mosque. We have a day where, you know, local communities stand up and say, look, we know the situation in the council. Let's stop fly tipping, stop, you know, every second Sunday, you know, in this, a friend of mine organizes every second weekend or second Saturday of the month, they go out, litter picking at the local park and the local street. I think they do things like this to help, you know, to make it, you know.
I think that's a very valid point. I think that'd be a very important step to take up, because over the last, what is it now, coming up to our second year in the council as councillors, we've had so many fly tipped areas cleaned, so many. I mean, I've probably done thousands of inquiries, and the council, you know, services have come out and cleaned. But the moment they come out clean, following day, you know, we know the hotspot areas. We've been trying to get funding to put flower pots in certain key locations without any real success. But I think that's very important that, you know, we start looking at how we can get the community involved, because I think we're exhausted by sending all these emails and then having collection, dumping, collection, dumping, collection, dumping. It's just a I mean, I'll go back to Albert Road today, and I promise you, on the corner just opposite my road, and I've seen my CCTV footage. You can't recognise the people because it's at a long distance. But, you know, it's like, it's become the norm, and we've got to break that cycle, and I think we can only achieve that if the community works. Sorry.
You're here.
Parking equally, there's no talking about parking in the road is the road. If they're doing that, I don't know. And all of that, it needs to be same way, because I think it's actually parents. Some of the things in our culture are our own way of the royal thing. And I don't think that we can say the
Yeah, no, look, there's fine balancing act to be had. And can I just give you one example, and we're going to call this at the end of the meeting. I came across, summer of last year, a group of lads, and they were, you know, just chilling, sitting on a wall, and they were throwing litter on the floor, right? Now I could go over to them and say to them, pick up the litter, don't put it on the floor, local council. But I knew that that approach would only aggravate the situation. So you know what I did? I went over and I picked up the rubbish in front of them. I took it to the bin. And some of the other lads like said, well, you know, don't throw that rubbish on the floor. And they started picking it up themselves. I hear what you're saying, you know, but I genuinely think that there is some middle ground where the community needs to act collectively, and part of that would be to not only do little cleanups, but also be there to see who's actually putting the mess and then reporting. So it's sort of collective, and I think, you know, that balance has to be had, because if we don't take ownership, then you know, to say that the council will just pick up enforcement is very difficult. I mean, I've had so many requests for cameras.
That's the way you make money. That's what counts.
That's true. But how do we, I mean, this is one of the problems we have with CCTV cameras. CCTV cameras have been installed in various hotspot locations. And unfortunately, people have arrived, you can't identify them, they've got face coverings or they've got hoodies, and they come and dump and they leave. And so, you know, that's why I say there needs to be, and if someone who's operating locally, 9 times out of 10 it is, and the local community is involved, then they'll be reluctant to stop. I think there needs to be some middle ground, but I hear what you're saying. Jab, and then we're going to wrap up because we're going to be kicked in.
Everyone goes here is very concerned with the everyone needs to work. Because a lot of hard work has come to this. This is a lot of individual people, a lot of hard work. People, a lot of hard work. You turn up every month, you know, and you have this as well. You know, as individuals, we can only do so much. As a collective, you know,
well, let's think about that. I think maybe something like we used to do the old Aston Ward forums. Yeah, I think Javid would probably take a lead in that. Maybe something worth having a look at.
Well, don't you already have a residents association?
Yeah, there are some, but we can bring them into.
Okay.
Thank you ever so much for coming. Thank you guys.
No.